girls, I'm going to start you off this week with a fraction review. Now we know that when we were in class that we were learning about the four square method. So I'm going to go ahead and draw my four squares here. Okay, I have 1, 2, 3, 4, and you know that this is just to keep us organized and kind of help our brain prompt us of what's coming next. So in that first quadrant, we're going to go ahead and write our problem and change it to improper if it were a mixed fraction. The first fraction that we're going to look at is just a normal fraction. So we're going to have 2/3 plus 1/6. Okay, so not a mixed fraction here. It doesn't have that whole number and the fraction. It's just a normal fraction. So I'm going to move over to the second quadrant. And I'm going to write down my denominator. So those are my bottom numbers. So I have 3 and I have 6. Now the LCD is just finding that lowest number that's in common with the denominators. Now how I do that is I just count by those numbers. So I'm going to count by 3s. So I would say 3, then comes 6, then comes 9, then comes 12. Okay, and I will just count a little ways. So basically this is just my multiplication facts. Then I'm going to count by 6s. 6, then comes 12, then I would have 18. Now I'm looking for numbers that are in common. So what's in the top row and what's also on the bottom row? Well, I see 6 and I also see 12. Now I want to use 6 because 6 is the lowest number. So now that I have found my least common denominator, I'm going to move to this third box down here. And what I want to do, this box is called the rewrite box. So I'm going to drop down my problem, which was 2/3 and 1/6. So I've just rewrote this problem here. Now I'm going to draw my fraction bars, and I'm going to put that number that I found over here on the bottom. So that's going to be 6 here and 6 here. Now the bottom fraction will not change because it already has 6 on the bottom. So this is just saying multiply by 1. So 1 times 1 is 1. 6 times 1 is 6. So that fraction didn't change. Now I want to figure out how can I get from 3 to 6. So I'm going to say 3 times 2 gets me to 6. And so because I multiplied by 2 on the bottom, I want to do the same thing to the top. So then 2 times 2 gives me 4. Now over here, my last box, this box is called the solve and reduce box. So what I want to do here is actually take my fractions that I have found, my new fractions, the one that I have rewritten, and I want to now add them. So make sure that you're paying attention to what the operation is. It's 4/6 plus 1/6, and because I have the same denominator now, I can just go ahead and add the top numbers only. So 4 plus 1 gives me 5. 5, 6, and then there's my answer. Of course, I want to make sure that I can reduce, but here I cannot reduce by 2, by 3, or by 5, so 5, 6 is my final answer. Alright, boys and girls, so now we're going to try a mixed fraction. So I'm going to again go ahead and draw my line down to make my 4 quadrants here. Okay, so the top quadrant, I'm going to write my problem. So I'm going to have 3 and 1/2 minus, so this time we're going to do a subtraction problem, minus 1 and 3/4. So now, because I have a mixed fraction, let's see here, I'm going to go in and change my color real quick. I am going to take the whole number and the denominator, and I'm going to multiply them together. So 3 times 2 gives me 6, and then I want to add that top number. So 6 plus 1 gives me 7. So I have 7 over the same denominator, which was 2. So again, let's try that again. I'm going to circle the whole number and the denominator. So 1 times 4 gives me 4. And then I take that and I add the top number. So 4 plus 3 gives me 7 over 4. So now I have new fractions, and those new fractions are 7 over 2 and 7 over 4. So now I'm going to come over to my LCD box, and that is where I'm going to find a common denominator. So I have 2 as my first denominator and 4 as my second denominator. And again, this just means that I'm going to count by those numbers. I'm going to count by 2's. 2, 4, 6, 8. Now I'm going to go and count by 4's. 4, 8, 12. Well, what do I see in common? I see 4 in common. I see 8 in common. Which one do I want to use? I want to use the lowest. So my LCD is going to be 4. I'm going to move down to the rewrite box. So I have 7 over 2, and I have 7 over 4. Again, I want to use 4 as my common denominator. So I'm going to draw my fraction bars, and I'm going to put 4 on the bottom for both. Okay? Again, I'm going to take 4 and figure out how can I go from 4 to 4? Well, I'm going to say 4 times 1. And so I'm going to do the same thing to the top number. 7 times 1 gives me 7. I move to the top fraction. How can I go from 2 to 4? Well, 2 times 2 gives me 4. So I will do the same to the top number. 7 times 2 gives me 14. Now finally, I come over to my solve and reduce box, which is this one, the last one. And I'm going to take 14 fourths, and I'm going to remember that this problem is subtraction. So 14 fourths minus 7 fourths actually gives me 7 fourths. And there's my answer. Now, this is an improper fraction. So because this is an improper fraction, I'm going to take, this is like Santa sitting on top of his elf. We got to throw Santa in the house. So I'm going to put 7 in the house, 4 outside. Can 4 go into 7? Yes. 4 times 1 gives me the closest thing without going over. So that gives me 4. And then I'm going to subtract it. 7 minus 4 gives me 3. And then, of course, I want to think about my wind strategy. W, I, N, and D. So that means that 1 is my whole number. I'm going to ignore the 7 minus the 4. Look at the 3. The 3 is my numerator. And then D, denominator, the 4 is my denominator. So my answer is 1 and 3/4.